Welcome back to KO with Kyle. I'm Kyle, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel. You'll feel right at home as we talk about all things UFC, including both forecast and recap episodes of fights as they go down, and any and all UFC-related news and updates. Just last week, we posted our first forecast episode just before the recent fights, now available on YouTube and Spotify. Today we will recap on the past weekend's August 1st fight between Brunson and Shahbazyan, and all the other fights and cancellations leading up to the main card. But before we get into all the surprises and upsets, we want to make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, smash the like button for the algorithm, and let us know in the comments below if you're enjoying the new podcast. We want to continue providing you all MMA-related content in the era of COVID and keep you up to date with the latest UFC news as it comes. A few clicks goes a long way. Thank you, and please subscribe. All right, now let's get into it. This is the recap episode to the August 1st fight night between Brunson and Shahbazyan. I would say overall it was good fights, the ones we got at least. It was entertaining prelims to start it off. The finishes were strong. There was a KO, a TKO, and a submission. It was kind of an interesting card because there was 3 canceled fights. The light heavyweight fight between Ed Herman and Gerald Mearschart. I think Gerald tested positive for COVID, is what he said it on Instagram. So that one was canceled. 2 middleweight fights were canceled. One between Perez and either Spicely or Gutierrez, I think is what it was, but neither one ended up happening. That middleweight fight was scrapped. The other one in the middle of the fight card was Holland versus Giles was also canceled. Trevin Giles passed out in the back, I think is what they said, and so that one was canceled. So yeah, 2 middleweight, 1 light heavyweight, 3 canceled fights all around. The other theme of the night was the groin strikes. I think there was 10 groin strikes. People were posting memes about it. I saw a DJ Khaled meme of another one. And there was just, people were saying, UFC, this is nuts. But I don't get the big deal. They're wearing cups, or at least they should be. They're protected. A groin strike is just a way to get a little breather in the middle of a fight, in my opinion. So I think the guys use that, but it helps both guys. They both get breathers, so it's hard to say who that really is an advantage to. It just maybe refreshes the fight if they take the time after a groin strike. So there was 10 of them over the night, so definitely affected multiple fights. One of them was a deduction of a point. So overall on the card, the favorites did well. The Las Vegas odd makers did pretty well predicting these ones. There was a couple upsets, notably the main event and the co-main event. And the other theme, Bobby King Green, he left it in the judges' hands again. That makes it 10 for 11 past fights. He's left it into the judges' decision. So tough break for him, but he put on a really good performance, and it was the fight of the night. So let's get into it with the prelims. Started it off with Chris Gutierrez, El Guapo, versus Cody Durden. And Cody Durden had to come in on short notice to fill in on that one. And Gutierrez is really an entertaining fighter. I wasn't too familiar with him, but he just peppers with straight shots, leg kicks, those little calf kicks that add up. I really love those. I would say that's one of my favorite things about fighters that can mix in boxing, wrestling, and the calf and leg kicks especially. I just feel like it does so much damage, really debilitates guys. So Gutierrez is one of those guys. Unfortunately, round 1, it was a 10-8 round for Durden. He got a takedown. He got Gutierrez's back. He was just controlling him on the ground, almost finished him, almost got a submission. The judges scored that one 10-8, so going into rounds 2 and 3, Chris Gutierrez was already behind. But coming into this fight, he was on a 3-fight win streak. He had a TKO with leg kicks, which is, what I'm all about. So a guy I can't remember the opponent, but he just dropped, couldn't continue, couldn't stand back up. In this fight between Durden and Gutierrez, there was a takedown in late round 2 and almost an armbar. And interestingly enough, Durden had fought July 18th, which is pretty recent, not quite a 10-day turnaround, but a pretty recent turnaround. And that was an 80-second victory, so that's why he was able to come back so quick. Gutierrez got a great takedown defense in round 3. You could see Durden was tired. I just personally scored it Gutierrez rounds 2 and 3. I think the judges did too. Everybody scored it unanimous. 28-28 draw. So they might throw that one back in the future. They like to do that with draws. And Gutierrez is someone to look out for in the future. I guess so is Cody Durden. They both put on a pretty good fight. But Cody Durden kind of gassed. And for whatever reason, had the fight gone any longer, it definitely was going in Gutierrez's favor. So the next one we have was at featherweight. That was between Jamal Pretty Boy Emmers and Vince the Anomaly Caceres. Another short notice replacement. Vince Caceres was coming in. It was supposed to be Jamal Emmers versus Timur Valiev. But for undisclosed reasons, they replaced it on short notice with a former LFA fighter in Vince Caceres. It was his UFC debut. And Emmers was the biggest favorite on the card going into this. Round 1, get into it. Emmers is just landing huge punches and kicks at distance. He's the taller guy. He just found his range right away. Emmers was just teeing off with knees to the body and a tie clinch in round 1. He started to slow a little bit with about 2 minutes left in round 2. And Caceres, for being teed off on for 2 straight rounds, he looked like he had taken no damage. He's just one of those guys who just takes hits well. He's getting hit in the head over and over again. No cuts at that point in time, so he just looked no worse for the wear, although he was just taking shot after shot by Emmers. Round 3, Jamal switched it up to all takedown attempts, just over and over shooting on him. He finished the fight in a mount, just didn't quite actually finish the fight, but the clock ended with him in the mounted position. So the judges gave it 30-27 unanimous decision. This was Jamal Emmers' first UFC win. Pretty exciting for him at featherweight. I'm sure they'll give him not somebody too tough next, but somebody up and coming. So look out for Jamal Emmers. He put on a pretty good fight. Next on the prelims was Johnny Munhoz, undefeated coming into this at featherweight, versus Nate Maynard, who was the favorite. He's 11-1. Johnny Munhoz, another guy coming in on short notice. Nate Maynard was supposed to fight Ray Borg, and I don't know the reason why Ray Borg couldn't make that one. I have to look into that. But Munhoz, in this fight, he got a takedown in round 1. There was a couple groin strikes, actually. They stopped the fight. They warned him. He got a takedown. He was doing pretty well, Johnny Munhoz. He got a Kimura attempt, and it kind of evolved into a mounted ground and pound to finish up that round. In round 2, Nate Maynard came back a little bit. He was striking a little bit better. In that round, they deducted a point from Munhoz for a groin strike. It had been, I don't know, like 6 at that point on the card. They just had so many already in the night. They warned him, took a point, so he was just in an impossible situation. He had to finish the fight basically to win. He probably lost that round 2. Munhoz got cut on the eyebrow in round 2. Finished on top and in half guard. And then in round 3, Munhoz was on the ground attempting a calf slicer, which you sometimes see. You see a version of it. And he didn't quite finish it. It wasn't a submission, so it ended up going to the judges. The judges ruled it 29-27 unanimous decision for Nate Maynard. So who knows how it would have been versus Ray Borg, but good on Johnny Munhoz coming in and filling in on late notice. The last prelim was at bantamweight. It was Frankie Saenz versus Jonathan the Dragon Martinez. Frankie Saenz was 39 years old going into this one, so no spring chicken. He's definitely been doing it for a while. And again, this fight, Jonathan Martinez, the Dragon, he's one of those guys who can utilize kicks, a lot of low kicks, leg kicks, calf kicks, body kicks, throwing up high kicks. He weighed in at 4 pounds over for this fight, so you hate to see that. It's unfortunate. Lost a part of his purse, but it helped him defend against some of the takedowns. Frankie Saenz would have preferred to this one to be more of a wrestling match, but Martinez was able to kind of prevent that. He had found his distance. He's able to just stay away, and with the kicks, just keeping the distance. There was maybe the 8th groin strike of the night by this prelim fight, and Martinez was throwing head kicks. One of them was a knockdown, not quite a KO, but knocked him to the ground. And then later, Martinez, after winning probably rounds 1 and 2, knees Frankie in the chin for a KO, and that's how it finished that one. So look for Jonathan Martinez at bantamweight. The Dragon is now 12-3 coming out of this one, so he will probably get a pretty good fight after this, and we'll be on the lookout for him. And following all that, we had the main card. We had the welterweight one canceled, like I said. The image for the UFC shared for this fight night, they had moved the light heavyweight card up to the main event, but I think it was because of coronavirus. That one was canceled as well. So we ended up seeing first Lando Venata, Groovy Venata, versus Bobby King Green, and these guys' rematch that I had mentioned. This one was a slugfest. It was a back and forth. It was pretty close. It was not a dominant performance on either end, but the judges gave it a unanimous decision in the end. But I thought it was pretty close, especially round 1. Bobby Green got a takedown. He got a knockdown with a punch, and then he kind of chained it into wrestling and got another takedown right after that. He kind of had the advantage on the feet, Bobby Green, with the boxing range. He was definitely leading on the feet, but Venata had got a takedown himself, so they were kind of at one point equal in takedowns. Later in the fight, Bobby King Green just starts to come away with it. He gets 3 of 3 takedowns. The takedowns keep establishing just his dominance and able to do a little ground and pound each time, and he's just establishing his distance with the jab. He's kneeing in the clinch and into an elbow for a knockdown, and he's briefly in the mount. He didn't quite finish the fight, but the judges scored it 30-27 unanimous. This one was a fight of the night. These guys' first fight was a fight of the night, so anytime these guys fight, like they said in the commentary of the event, seems like it's going to be a fight of the night. These guys both did well. Bobby Green comes away with the win. At lightweight, just a bunch of fun fights for him up next. So we will see what happens with each of these guys. Like I said in the forecast, Lando Venata had previously fought Tony Ferguson, so I don't think we'll see anything like that in the near future for either of these guys, but who knows? There was a lot of good fights at lightweight. So moving on, at welterweight, at 185, or at 170, I mean to say, Vicente Luque was at negative 185. I have it in my notes here. That's what confused me for a second there. Versus Randy Rude Boy Brown. Luque, the silent assassin, coming in as the favorite. I thought he was definitely going to win this fight. He's just so exciting every time he fights. He's another guy who can utilize the leg kicks. He rocked Randy Brown with shots early in round 1. He was consistent with the leg kicks, the calf kicks in round 1. He dropped him in round 2 with a calf kick, and thought it was almost going to be finished at that point, but it continued, and Brown had to change stances because of all the damage he had taken on his lead leg, and Brown got a takedown with 1 minute remaining in round 2. So he was still in it. Vicente Luque was beating him up pretty bad. Later in the fight, there's a knee close to illegal. It was real close. Basically knocked out Brown. Luque finishes with the flurry after the knee, but the judges, or the commentary staff, basically said he lifted up his neck or his head to knee him in the head. His hands weren't quite touching. He wasn't a downed opponent. His knee wasn't down. He just lifted the guy's head up just enough, kneed him in the head. Vicious knee. I mean, he was essentially out after the knee, and then the flurry finishes it up. So Vicente Luque gets the TKO victory. Really exciting win for him. His only notable loss in recent history was against Wonderboy Thompson in a decision. So we'll definitely see a big fight out of Vicente Luque next, and he deserves it. After the Nico Price fight, and then after this one with Randy Rude Boy Brown, you gotta say he's on a streak, and definitely, if it wasn't for that Thompson fight, he'd be on about a 6-fight streak. So look out for Vicente Luque at welterweight. He's one of the guys who stood out for the night. He got a performance of the night bonus for this one, so good on him. And moving on, at the co-main event of the night, it was Joanne Calderwood, who came in as the favorite, versus Jennifer Maia. And Jennifer Maia was a former boxer before turning to MMA, so I thought that she might have the advantage on the feet, even though she was a little bit shorter, maybe had slightly shorter reach. In the first round, Calderwood got a takedown. She caught a kick and kind of got on top of her after that, after a bit of a feeling out process at the beginning of the fight. Maia's boxing was a little bit of an advantage, like I thought it might be, but Calderwood was keeping her distance with kind of like knees and not knees, but kicks and ranged attacks. They got to the ground. I think it was after the caught kick, and they just stayed on the ground for a long time. It started with an armbar attempt that Joanne Calderwood kind of got out of. She was still on top. Jennifer Maia was underneath on the bottom. She just continued to transition, got a hold of wrist control again, went for another armbar attempt, and Joanne Calderwood did a defense of putting her knee on the throat. She had a chin on the throat of Jennifer Maia. It looked brutal, like she was just squashing her, but Joanne Calderwood rolled a little bit forward, and then her arm was exposed even worse, and Maia just held on the whole time. And it was from that initial takedown that she just kept working for it, worked for wrist control, armbar attempt, and she got it. She flattened her out after she kind of rolled off of the shin on the throat position, and just kept working from the bottom and got the submission. So that was an underdog pick. I kind of predicted in the forecast that Jennifer Maia might win this one. I definitely predicted that this one was going to go to a decision, just based on their previous fight history. Didn't go to a decision, so that would have been a lost bet, but I had Maia winning this one as the underdog, so that was good. If you had made that bet based on my information, congrats on you. You made some money. And it was a good fight, and we'll definitely see something from Jennifer Maia. We saw a tweet from Valentina Shevchenko saying essentially we'll see you soon. So who knows if they'll set that one up next, but Shevchenko puts to sleep essentially everyone she fights. So not quite to sleep, but she definitely is winning all these bouts against her opponents. So I would not want to fight Shevchenko personally, but maybe Jennifer Maia has what it takes. That remains to be seen if they'll make that matchup. And moving on to the main event, we had the highly anticipated and much hyped Edmund Shahbazyan versus Derek Brunson. And this one is at middleweight. And I was on the hype train of Shahbazyan. I had just been all about, he was undefeated. He has impressive victories. It's not going past the first round except for the first fight. And just from the Contender Series, he had been a big prospect for a long time. Derek Brunson, on the other hand, had fought who's who. He's fought Whitaker, Adesanya, Romero, Souza, Silva, anyone you can think of at middleweight he's fought. So he has definitely been more of the veteran. I should have considered that previous to this fight, going into this fight in the forecast episode. I probably should have considered that Brunson was more of the veteran. Shahbazyan had fought lesser names. That would play a bigger role. Shouldn't have got on the hype train as much, but hindsight is 20/20. In this fight at the very beginning, I was thinking, wow, Brunson is looking very swole. And not just the hairdo, the Adesanya style hair over the light yellow, but it was the just tone in his chest and his pecs and his arms. He just looked like a bigger fighter. Shahbazyan looked like, I don't mean to be mean, but like a big little kid. Like he had kind of the Ben Askren build. So his body wasn't as impressive, and he definitely had the strength in his shots, don't get me wrong. During the first couple rounds especially, it looked like Shahbazyan was putting in some work with some of his straight rights. They were blocked for the most part, but still hitting very hard. And I was surprised that this was just a 3-round main event. And I guess it was because this wasn't the original main event. I think Holly Holm was supposed to be the original main event for this card as a fight night. But nevertheless, this was a 3-round main event. Didn't even go the full amount of time, so we didn't need the 5 rounds nevertheless. But it would have been nice to see it set up that way. It started out as a bit of a feeling out process for the first couple of minutes. Shahbazyan starts switching up his boxing with going to shots to the body that looked like it was having somewhat of an effect. And Brunson definitely had the advantage in terms of grappling, and his wrestling was on display. Not quite right away, but after he kind of figured out maybe he had the advantage in wrestling, it just saw more and more of it. He was just using his boxing basically to switch into his wrestling and go after shots and takedown attempts. And the round 1 was kind of close. I had scored it maybe for Shahbazyan because some of the body shots and some of the hard hits, as I was saying, some of his rights. But when it was more of a boxing match in round 1, it was close, maybe favoring Shahbazyan. As it went to round 2, it really switched and started to favor Derek Brunson. Round 2 ended with Derek Brunson on top, raining blows. He cut Shahbazyan really bad with an elbow on top. Herb Dean stepped in. I don't know if it was before the bell or right at the bell, or he waved it off right at the bell. Maybe he was trying to prevent further attacks from the top. But it looked almost like he called off the fight. It looked almost like Shahbazyan was out completely, but he wasn't. But he was just bleeding badly. And in between rounds, he kind of went back to his corner, fell back off the stool into the cage a little bit. He was visibly rocked. He was having definitely a hard time. Cut from that elbow, the cut man got that kind of worked out a little bit. The doctor comes in. The doctor looks at the cut. Dana White complained after the fight that the doctor took 5 minutes looking at the cut and he should have just continued the fight or ended the fight based on how bad the cut was. I didn't think it was quite 5 minutes. It was literally only maybe a minute and a half or something. But the doctor decided Shahbazyan was good to continue the fight. He said he wanted to continue. The commentary staff said you can tell he doesn't on his feet want to continue. But he did anyways, went into the third round. And it was just a sitting duck. Derek Brunson was going for the kill. He was, again, just switching up his boxing and wrestling. Overwhelmed him with the combination. Even in the finish, it was a couple shots boxing and then the takedown. Swept the leg, kind of did a little sweep. Got him to the ground. And Herb Dean called it right away. Some people online, I said, early stoppage. I don't quite think this was an early stoppage. Shahbazyan was barely defending himself. He definitely wasn't going to land a KO punch out of nowhere. It was just like over for him. He was too gassed. He had got very tired. The wrestling really wore him out. The fight was close to being called at the end of round 2. I was surprised he even went into round 3, but there wasn't much for him in round 3. Derek Brunson looked really good. He looked good on top. He looked good on his wrestling. Once he figured out he had the advantage, he turned it into a dirty boxing match. It was very reminiscent of a Kamaru Usman or a Randy Couture. He just went after Shahbazyan, got him against the cage, punch, went for a takedown over and over, and just worked on those underhooks and got a big win for himself. So who knows who Derek Brunson will see next. Probably another big name, maybe a rematch, try to redeem himself against somebody he fought and lost to in the past, or maybe an up-and-comer, I'm not really sure, at middleweight. But there's plenty of fights for Shahbazyan in the future. It's not over for him. It's his first loss. He'll learn, he'll grow from this. Maybe he'll get more ripped, who knows. But he's a great fighter still. He puts on entertaining fights. He's dangerous in the first couple minutes of a fight. Maybe he's a little susceptible to wrestling, but that is not certain. He did pretty good. He just was overwhelmed a bit. But great fights overall on the card. Good card. I had fun. Hope you guys had fun with the recap of the events. The next upcoming one is August 8th. It's Derek Lewis versus Alexei Oleinik. Keep tuned. Stay tuned keep posted. Stay tuned for the upcoming episode of the forecast of that one. We'll talk about the Vegas odds and maybe some good picks for that one as well. My main picks going into this card was that Venata and Green was going to go to the distance. It did. My pick was that the female fight, Calderwood and Maia, would go to the distance. It did not. I picked that Maia would win that fight, and she did. So good on the predictions that I made, 2 of 3, and we'll hope to continue those odds or do better next time and make more picks next time, just depending on what the odds look and who looks good. So thanks for listening. We will come with you next time for the forecast episode. This has been the recap episode to August 1st fight night, Derek Brunson, Shahbazyan. This is your host, Kyle. Thank you for listening to KO with Kyle. Tune in next time.